Have you been wasting time? Dave, this is Dave Bryant. I'm Rick from thrivingnow.com. And yeah, have you been wasting time, David? Dave?
Well, I struggle with that, whether to call it a waste or not. It's a real definitional issue. What the hell's the yardstick anyway? What are the criteria for waste? I was raised to believe that I had to clean up my plate, that I better turn off the lights when I'm not in the room, and so forth. And so waste was presented to me with a lot of shame. And so if you were wasteful, then shame on you. And you should not do that. And so somehow that transferred to time. Time, my dear fellow, is a precious, unrenewable resource, and you cannot waste it. And so I have a lot of cannots and should nots around waste. And yet I find that when I do something sort of frivolous, like play a card game on the internet, that I feel like I need it for balance. It's what I call me time. And without that, I get irritable, I start making bad decisions, and so forth. And my touchstone for that is my wife, Lucy, who will notice those things. And thank goodness she's able to bring it to my attention. Do you realize it? Oh, thank you. And
you're grumpy. Go play a game.
That's right.
Did she ever say something like that?
Right. And so she's perfectly okay with my whiling away time, so to speak. And I finished a book about half a year ago called Affluence Without Abundance. And it's about Bushmen of South Africa. And the interesting thing there was that they had no sense of shame around spending idle time. None whatsoever. It wasn't even a term that they were familiar with. It had to be translated somehow, so and they could barely understand what that meant. So if they were hungry, they went out and hunted or gathered. But if they had plenty to eat, then it was usually a social time, but nonetheless, just spend time doing nothing. And maybe just chatting or something, and that was not only okay, but a good thing for a good life. And that really opened my eyes to say, wow, this is sort of a cultural thing, this shame about wasting time. And my parents bought into it, their parents bought into it, and so on. And so they passed it on to me and my sister. And I'm on the verge of thinking that there is no such thing as a waste of time, that indeed we are seeking a sort of an emotional balance all the time. And if we get out of equilibrium, then often it's because we haven't spent any what I call me time.
And in the same way, we can have so much me time that we don't spend enough we time.
Yeah, so true.
So to reflect what I'm hearing is that there are cultures where what we look at from the outside world, from our culture, looking through our lens into their world, it looks like they're not doing anything.
Right.
And they could be improving their lot, their hut could have a wood floor, or they could have more in their larder instead of just going out and hunting when you're hungry. Why wouldn't you want, like, I have food in my freezer? The line between hungry and being fed does not have anything called hunting, really, unless you look at it from my perspective. Oh, I gotta find what, amidst all of the bushes of greens and vegetables, where's my hamburger in my freezer? So through our cultural lens, we can look at other cultures and say that they're wasting time because they're in conflict with our values, the values that we have about the way that you're supposed to be, way that you should be, the way that you should handle the resources of your life, your time, your energy, your life. So And that for you, you're really looking at, is there anything such as wasted time? Like something as obvious as, hey, you're an adult man and you're playing a game.
Yeah.
When you've got all these skills that you could be doing more of, you could be doing more of this and more weeding and more planting and more
Yeah.
sharing and more service and
Yeah.
more, yeah, more, 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 more,
Yeah.
more, 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 more,
Yeah.
more. Yeah. And so that as you looked at your balance, that emotional balance, I think the physical balance, the energetic expression balance of that, the homeostasis for you includes things that for a lot of people would be, even our parents might have been considered wasteful. Does that cover it?
Yeah, it does. And to show you how ingrained it is, why one of the first questions that we ask when being introduced to someone new is, what do you do? As if that's who you are. And it translates sort of in my vocabulary to, we're accustomed to regarding one another as human doings more than human beings.
Yeah.
And so, instead of asking, hey, what's your passion? What are you excited about? or something like that. What do you do? And
I've got a question.
Mm.
So what's the most deliciously nourishing way that you have wasted time in the last week?
Oh, yeah. In the past week. Well, I was a captive for a full day on an aircraft. And so I spent some time snoozing and some time reading, and finished a book and was glad to have finished it. And was that a waste of time? Well, some of it seemed to have been. And it was a delicious, that's not a really good example. Let me think.
Well, go back further than a week. What's a deliciously nourishing way that you waste time ever?
Learning a Chopin mazurka on piano. Yeah. Sort of in trying to entrain the muscle memory. It both takes focus and it's boring as hell. Just playing over and over and over until my fingers get it. And so is that a waste of time? Well, I could be tapping for someone and making a difference in their life. and I could be in the garden weeding, or as you say, just quite relative. How about you?
Well, it is interesting, as Jean said, why is that a waste of time? Aren't you learning something? And that to me is the value, the cultural value, that if we're learning, then we're not wasting time. And we can use that as a rationalization. And I think that's where and it's a good one. Yeah, it's one that's culturally acceptable, is to rationalize what we do, as opposed to just being in it. You could say, hey, I drove an hour in order to sit with my feet in a waterfall for 15 minutes. And so I wasted all of that gas and miles on my car and time just sitting behind the wheel, not just sitting behind the wheel, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
That there are people that will look at that and go, wow, why didn't you go later so you didn't have to leave the waterfall to do the circle call? Why did you really need to sit there with the air conditioning on while you did the call? Couldn't you have done it another way? And this is, I think that for me, as I've thought about this topic, and thank you for joining me with this, the energy of of wasting versus acceptance. I mean, one of the core things that I have that attracted me to tapping was the idea that something could be acceptable, that I could be acceptable, that my choices could be acceptable in the face of someone somewhere, and maybe someone I love, really judging that as a waste of time, looking at me from the outside world, not knowing the homeostasis that my body wants, needs, and delights in. No, and I don't think that I'm saying that like you have a positive value. Like this is one of the things that I do think we judge. Judging to me is a very acceptable thing. If it wasn't, I would be a very unacceptable person. I am constantly evaluating, right? I mean, I can't, I'm evaluating now. Like I just, I liked your question. Why is it a waste of time? Aren't we learning something? To me, that is like, oh, yay, right. Because learning is a positive value judgment. It's a positive value judgment. Wasting time is a negative value judgment. And that it boils down to value judgment.
Yeah.
Is there something that you used to view as something that you would have evaluated against as being congruent for you, that now is true for you, that it's core for you, it's a valued thing? Is there something that you've seen, like a switch in your viewpoint, that's really, I think, indicative of that, like the difference and changes in value judgment?
Well, yes. It's nearly 4 years now that where I'll celebrate an anniversary, so to speak, of a decision that I made almost out of the blue. And it was founded on a question: do I have to be right? And so my academic training was, yes, I have to be right, and I better be well equipped. So I better know logic cold. And so I learned it, I taught it, and I lived it. So, and that's all left brain as far as I'm concerned. And so I was seeking balance, and I sought it through various artistic endeavors and things of that nature. But I really came to see that this focus of mine on listening with an eye to response was very hard on my capacity to truly listen, because as I was supposedly listening, Daisy just came in and
hi, Daisy,
just licking me. So I found that I was never truly listening. Instead, in the back of my mind, I was formulating a response, and that was robbing me of true connection. And so it turned me into a much better listener. Lucy now calls me the new David. And she probed and tested, as would be normal with a major shift like that. And wow, has come to see that it's really holding. And so as a result, she feels free to question me on things and to call my attention to something that I may not have been aware of that was meaningfully negative, and without my coming back at her in some fashion. So somehow that feels relevant. I just am a better listener.
Yeah. So the question of, is there something that you would have viewed as wasting time that now is like core to and congruent for me? The idea of sitting in meditation, just focusing on your breathing, letting go of thoughts. At the time when I had that pretty forcefully. The person who was going to help me, I was very sick, and she said, if we're going to work together, I need you to be doing things to strengthen your energy and system in between.
Mm-hmm.
So she put it in a different context. It was like, oh, okay, so this isn't wasting time to sit and meditate now. Okay, it's for my healing.
Mm-hmm.
And that made it acceptable. Made it acceptable to my family that before eating in the morning and before dinner, I would sit for 20 minutes uninterrupted.
Mm-hmm.
That extended then to start journaling of what was alive for me. So,
Mm-hmm.
And I journaled, I don't know, 50,000 pages, who knows, it was a lot. It filled up a closet with pages.
Wow.
Made for a nice bonfire at one point.
Mm-hmm.
So prior to that, meditation was wasting time. Mm-hmm. It became necessary, medically necessary, and that made it acceptable. And today, it's just a core part of my homeostasis, my rebalancing, my nourishment, my bliss. It is so many of those things. And I guess one of the things that I look at in this subject of have you been wasting time, where are those ways that we're actually blocking ourselves from something because we think it would be a waste of time. Mm-hmm. Maybe the level of success that we would have. I see that, like, there are times with my guitar, 3 years, it'll be 3-year anniversary coming up here in a week.
Oh.
There are times when I'm playing and I'm like, this is a waste of time.
Yeah.
Why? Because I had this notion of where I would be. I would have this notion of what success was. And I get that around my business. I get that around relationships. There's that, this is a waste of time. And it's a flinch. It's like, okay, if I'm there, if that's coming up for me, to me, it's time to recalibrate. And there's one of, for me, the core is, what if there's no such thing as wasting time? Mm-hmm. There might be things that I'm holding on to or I'm doing to self-medicate when I might be more nourished in some other way. Mm-hmm. But if I start from this wasting time, not wasting time, black and white, to me, that's where the call is for something deeper. And for me in the guitar, it has to keep coming back to, this is a relationship. It's my relationship to music and vibration. Mm-hmm. My own tuning isn't always in, I can't just push my fingers on the right place on my body. Despite all the tapping I do, I don't necessarily sing exactly the right note out of my strings any more than when I'm in this relationship with my guitar that the right sound comes out. But there's some really sweet moments. And when I was feeling like I was wasting time, I added an instructor into the mix. So I now have someone who comes and weekly, he holds a space for me as my coach and keeps me in the sweet moments. What can we do that keep the sweet moments flowing in the relationship? Not that it's, and they lived happily ever after, jing, jing, jinga, jinga, jing, it's, and it is, this, at least in the culture I was raised in, this notion of wasting time, wasting resources, wasting, is a double-edged aspect. Mm-hmm. Like I want to be mindful of my use of resources, including gasoline and electricity, but I could turn off the lights and that would not be helpful, I think, for the engagement that I'm in. Mm-hmm. I could have done various things, like it's air conditioned right now and the window's closed, but they're mowing right outside my window and it's loud. I don't know if you can hear it, but he's literally right under my window. And the
Wow.
air conditioning keeps me cool enough to be in the lights and be here. My computer is running nice and warm, but the room itself isn't 80 some degrees. And those are using resources. Is it a waste? I have definitely people in my life that are like, air conditioning is a waste. You know, waggle, waggle. And I say,
Waggle.
yeah, I get it. Waggle. I've been waggled at in my life.
Me too.
And I get it and I can feel it. And sometimes I need to tap on it. And I know that my brain above 76 degrees stops being in this place of being able to easily drop in. I get, this starts doing its thing, and
Yeah.
I get sloppy kind of energetically a little bit more. Siesta time if it's above that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I'd like to bring up one other thing, and that has to do sort of with the nature of time itself. So there's a sense in which if the contemporary quantum theory is correct, then time is illusory, and that past, present, and future are simultaneous and ever present and available to us if we, some people specialize in past lives and that sort of thing. And another way of looking at it, all there is the present moment. and so wasting time, when you look at it as moment by moment series of kind of, I don't know, episodes in our life, why none of it is wasted, it merely is. And you can't waste time when you begin to think of being in the now, as they say.
So, yeah, I've heard those. There's a part of me that recognizes the truth in that, and also that I'm not sure how it like you can't waste time. A part of me is like, my own inner experience as a human being is that there are nows that lead to another now, which lead to another now, which lead to a now which says the things that have come before that are now like waste products in my body, the waste products of the experiences that I've just been through don't feel good to me. They doesn't feel like they were, let's say, congruently chosen. It could be that I was feeling resistance. And I like the circle of saying, yeah, so then it serves you. It's self-awareness. So it's not a waste that you went through that. And Jean said, what if worry is a waste of time? And I would say, if I want to counter that inside of myself, say, well, worry shows me what I'm really aware of, what's alive for me, and also what matters. Like, could be that I'm worried for my safety or the safety of people that I care about or of the earth. I'm worried about, so is worry a waste of time? I could make the case that in my inner culture, the one that I would, if someone said, well, I worry and it's such a waste of time, I would say, well, yeah, okay. I'm hearing that you feeling like it's a waste of time. And it also, it's sort of like when you brought up that experience and you said, well, this is how I wasted time, but you learned something, so someone else on the outside can lay on that. I'm feeling this wheel of there's something in why we came to view this. What's the intelligence behind this attitude that we're wasting time? What do you think the intelligence is that evoke this, oh, that's a waste of time. If there was one.
You're right. What comes to mind is that we, at least in our culture, highly value productivity. And someone who is non-productive isn't a good citizen, isn't contributing to the well-being of anyone except maybe themselves. And that's
a taker rather than a maker.
Yeah, right. And we have all kinds of negative terms for that sort of person, right? Slug a bed and lazy, good for nothing, and so forth. So I believe that it's a cultural thing, especially when I lay on this Bushman culture where it's a foreign concept. You can't even understand what waste of time might mean. And
how do they does it say how they handle something like the person who just wants to sit around the fire and not go out and hunt?
They do approach it. Let me think how it was done. They don't have a shunning practice, but there's something like it where they're forced to go to another tribe or something like that. And it's one of these shape up or ship out kind of rituals.
It's essentially an ostracism. They don't shame, but they say you're either with us or you need to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's an imperative requirement to be a part of the tribe.
Right. Yeah. I have an example. I had my left knee replaced. Now both legs are bionic. And I set off the alarm at the airport every single time. And so there was a period, the operation was in May this year. And I suffered a depression, the first in my life after that particular surgery. I'd had the other knee done a year ago and no such thing. But this time, and I look at it as a captive where I was unable to do most things that I would like to do. I could make my way with a walker to the bathroom, but that's mere maintenance. And so in hindsight, I value that experience because for the first time, I really got what it's like to feel depressed. And prior to that, if someone said that they were depressed or I sensed that they were, I couldn't really feel into it. And now I can. Yeah. And what a valuable experience. It was just fantastic. In hindsight, at the time, it really sucked. But so waste of time played big on my palate at the time. It was just, wow, you're worthless, right? You can't do anything and have to be waited upon to much greater degree than I was happy with. And so I had not thought about that period of depression. It lasted about a week. And I had a wake-up call when a drug, which I don't like taking any drugs, but a drug gave me gout. It was a side effect of a drug. And so I couldn't walk. I was learning to walk again, but it was in the same leg. It's a surgery. And wow, it was painful. And it just stopped me in my tracks. And that's when the depression started. And it took a week or so. What a waste of time. No kidding. Yeah.
I'm wasting my life. I'm wasting my time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the way I felt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember sitting in traffic. One of the first tapping successes I had was around us. I was coming out of Pittsburgh and I was trapped in a car on an overpass in traffic that was not moving, and it showed no sign of moving. And I started tapping and cussing and spittling. I can still see the spray on the inside of the windshield because they said really feel it, like get into it.
Yeah.
And and the words out of my mouth were I was wasting my life.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And from one standpoint, the traffic is part of a journey that facilitated where I had been, the meeting that I was at. In recovery and in even the cycle of depression, there is a quality of depth and empathy and compassion and other things that we get to we're are inflicted upon us or just where it's at.
Yeah.
I feel the intelligence of the cultural imperative. When if an indigenous culture says, "Oh, there's no problem sitting around wasting time," but in terms of the balance of survival, if you're the person who's always in and there's no reason for you to be, there's nothing that evokes compassion. There's no one in your family that is, and friends and tribe that are saying, yes, this person is depressed. He's in his life. He's got this injury or something else. There is a judgment there, and there's risk. There's a survival risk that gets to go and balance idleness with productivity. And I can feel, for example, the different tribe looking to balance. Of course, they don't have to come up with something about wasting time. There's, are we surviving or are we not? As an organism, as a tribe, are we making this work or not? And if there is someone who is really choosing to not be in the flow of survival or thriving, then they're asked to leave, that there's an expulsion option.
Yeah.
And when we take that, let's say that that's where we came from, is this idea that we need to fit in, and that there are requirements. There, being a good citizen, what does it mean? We've changed what it means to be a good citizen in a way, to me, that is very divorced from, the reality is divorced as well as the emotional world is divorced. It's very different. Like, if I knew that you were recovering and you were depressed and you're my friend, you're part of my tribe, and we live around the same fire, I'm going to share my berries with you. And if it's a good hunting day, I don't have a problem sharing with you. That's good for me, actually. It's not a waste of my time and energy, and it's not even a taking. It is a sharing. And I think that as we've isolated more, it's easier to view people that are non-productive as takers or wasters. And that and especially you layer then the incentive, the capitalist incentive. And I am a capitalist. I'm in that. That's my culture. I'm very generous within that, but there is sort of this pressure. We build up things that keep that aspect of us grinding, 9 to 5 or more.
Yeah.
The value, when I was working 80, 100-hour weeks, I felt like, dang, man, I am a worker bee.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember getting a hand-drawn picture of a bumblebee and the words, "I love my worker bee." And that was a gift at a time when I was working 100-hour weeks. Wow. Talk about reaffirming the idea that being in that is not a waste. It's good. Whereas in a lot of ways, if my value system now would be that I was wasting a lot of time. I was wasting the opportunity to be connected to people. I was, there were opportunities to be in life, savoring life, that were passing by. So I'm feeling the intelligence. The way that we do things here is that we honor the intelligence of our primitive brain, and honor the intelligence of an imperative that's trying to keep the tribe safe, and then how it gets out of balance. And my hope is that by looking at wasting time as something that, okay, if I feel that, what is it a signal of? Am I wanting to shift my value and my engagement with my values? Or is it really, I'm hearing my mother, finish what's on your plate.
Yes.
No, Mom, this food is not good for me. It was up until the 2/3 point, but another bite is going to make me not feel good. And if I clean the plate here, or if I put it in the refrigerator, I'm just cooling off something that I'm not going to eat tomorrow, the next day either, and it's going to end up in the compost. So, I'm not wasting food.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I live with people that still have that sort of pressure. And I seek to create this environment where people can be honoring of resource and also not with the externally or internally domesticated pressure to, I can't waste things, I can't waste things, I can't waste things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think that that's a healthy emotional place to stand. Is, am
Right.
I wasting it or am I not?
Mm-hmm. So Gene commented about Facebook comments that someone it's too much time on their hands. And that reminds me, it's a great comment, Gene, and it reminds me of why I have unplugged the TV years and years ago, actually. But after being certified in clinical hypnotherapy, I became very sensitive to trance states. And I came to realize that I am extraordinarily drawn to trance. And that if there's a TV going, I get sucked right in. And then I afterwards regard it as a waste of time. Oh, you didn't even know where you were. You were just sucked into this movie or this sitcom or whatever it might be. Yes, I might be laughing. Maybe it was a comedy show and I enjoyed it. But I regard it as a period when I feel out of control. I get consumed by something, and Facebook is similar in to that, I think, and so I have disconnected from Facebook except maybe once a month because I found that I was spending a lot of time there, and that I don't know if it's right to say that it worried me, but it was something like better use of the time, something like that.
Yeah, I'm feeling our struggle a bit, and if anyone else has an idea of how do you stand around things that like that better use of time, too much time on their hands. Like one of the things that I look at is I could schedule my life much tighter, and one of the things that I value is spaciousness, because spaciousness allows me to be responsive. My friends are often surprised at how quickly, relatively speaking, that I can respond to an ask, a bid for care, attention, play. And it's because my day, the way that I do it, leaves a lot of spaciousness. And yet there's also those things like that where's the, maybe as you were talking about Facebook, for example, there are definitely times where I thought, oh, this is a waste of time. And there are times when it's like, oh, I'm so glad that I'm here right now seeing this that I wouldn't have seen any other way. This is not actually, this is core for me. There's something that's being shared here that is nourishing a part of me that in the absence of this channel, I would not be getting this connection with my friend, with something that's meaningful to them, that they wanted to share it. I'm actually sitting down. I don't have a fire that I'm joining my friends around at the end of the day to share our stories and what's alive for us and to be renourished by that. And so it fits an aspect of it. And then there's this level at which it stops feeling congruent. Yeah. And I want to be careful that wasting time isn't where I stop. To me, that's like the check engine light. If I stop there and I don't even check the engine, just I'm gotta check the engine. there's something deeper. There's a diagnostic code that sits underneath that. And if I feel like I'm wasting too much time on Facebook, then there's something that is to be recalibrated. And yeah. Thank you. Is there anything else that you feel drawn to share as we bring this to a close right now? And if someone else has something they'd like us to tap on or engage around, we've been joined by a few people here.
I'm drawn to this subject in general because of the diversity of opinions that it has elicited whenever I bring it up. So I got several different stories from the 6 people I had breakfast with. And by and large, the sentiment was there is no such thing as wasting time, as long as there is some value in that can be derived from whatever one's doing. Whether it's sleeping, I mean, I think the example is often given that Thomas Edison thought that sleep is the biggest waste of time ever, and that he was, I guess, genetically programmed in a sense to need far less sleep than most people. And so he looked forward to the day when we didn't have to sleep because it's just a waste of time. But I acknowledge how healthy I feel when I've slept well, and how draggy I feel, and so my moment-by-moment existence is dulled and shunted, and so I value being alert and able to approach life with zest and with openness, and so sleep in that regard is not a waste. It's a mandatory health-related activity, or it's funny to call sleep an activity, but anyway, time. And but we spend what? Close to 1/3 of our life asleep.
Yeah. Yep. If we're lucky.
If we're lucky. Yeah.
Yeah. So people. A lot of the people that you're with are that you were describing some of the people. These are people that have been engaged very vividly in life, and they've come to a place where, for the predominant attitude is there's no such thing as a waste of time if it's like what I wrote down, grounded in views and things that we value, and this does go to the core of emotional freedom for me, is that what other people value and what they feel is to be unvalued, right?
Yeah.
Those external references, I'm going to be aware of them. I can't not be aware of them. And the core for me is like, okay, the self-awareness brings me back to, what about this do I value? In what ways might this be serving me? And start from that place of, I accept that if it's in my life, it has made its way there in some way that has been valuable. And I've done this with people that were on heroin, and when they really get into, like, what was the value of it? No value. It ruined my life. It ruined my relationship. Don't even speak to my son anymore. Okay. And if there was a value in the heroin, what might it have been? Oh, well, I was going to kill myself. Oh. So it was medicine for you. And it also threw you way out of balance. So I use that as an extreme example. You know, people that let's say that they like I have people that play video games, right?
Yeah.
And like one person, he hangs around the video game too much. His parents look at it like a waste of time. And I say, well, what need are you trying to meet through that? Is
Mm-hmm.
it what? Is it escape? No, but there's a little bit of it. So that's like 10, 15%. Like he's got some things going on in his life. Not easy. Like really not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing, just health-wise.
Yeah.
So that's an aspect of it. I said, well, what's really the need? Like when the need gets met and you don't feel like it's a waste of time, what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
And for him, it's like, oh, well, somebody wants to play with me and we're on a team together.
Mm.
And I get to be generous because I'm really good at this. I get to be generous. Like if they want one of my resources, I can just easily give it to them. And there are other people that are like, you're stupid. You gave them that thing and they're not nearly as good as you are. What are you doing? And he's like, yeah, but that's not. And I said, yeah, that's not the need that you're after. So you take this thing like playing game and you get down to the needs that it's meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And for like the heroin one, the need that he had was to soothe this jagged pain that was about to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
By his own hand, but
Mm-hmm.
it was really about to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And that same way that if we're in extreme pain, the doctor can apply morphine that, right there in the hospital, they've given me morphine because my kidney stone was really driving me. If that pain had existed for 3 months, I wouldn't have been able to live through it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an interesting question for those of us that are looking at our emotional world is, hey, what need of mine is this meeting?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the need for like setting the rest of life aside for a bit is a legitimate human need.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And, I do it by watching Planet Earth too. Or Blue Planet too.
You remind me of Carol Look's habit of saying, gosh, whatever you're doing, or maybe not doing, has value. It's like, well, you must be getting something out of it or you wouldn't be doing it. What is it? And so it is meeting a need. And I like that way of putting it even better.
Yeah, what's the upside of not doing this, or what's the upside of eating a whole cake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. That's one of the things I'm bringing from compassionate communication and NVC, nonviolent communication exploration, is this coming back to like, what are the needs that are being met?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in conversation with people that are looking at the difference between retributive justice and restorative justice.
Mm-hmm.
And that judgmental like wasting time as a judgment at something,
yes,
versus a self-awareness in like, how congruent is this with my values?
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's a waste of time. Okay. All right. So what if you had a value? What if your spleen had a value that this somehow meets? So what if your adrenal system, well, I've been so riled up by the television that playing this video game and smashing the dragon actually gives me a little bit of that violence outlet, which I'm such a pacifist. I don't want to be violent. I said, yeah. So you have a need to not express violence out there with flesh and blood,
mm-hmm.
but your adrenals may be just so charged up, ready for battle, that you need an outlet.
Yeah.
Is it a waste of time? And that's, I think, when we ground ourselves in that, okay, maybe it doesn't meet all of our values. If it's meeting one of them, it's not a waste of time. That's the definition I'm going to play with for a period of time here is like, oh, if it meets at least one of my values, then it's not a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I've learned from Kathy is there a way to stack value?
Oh.
Like I can have a value. Well, yeah. She loves stacking. She calls them stacking functions, right?
Okay.
So like, if we're going to do something together, then she'll look at a way that can serve another person. Then we could build on that and that and that. And the difference between like choose not game. Why? Because there's a that needs to be in that kind of does. There's a bit of Dragon Slayer in me.
Mm-hmm.
To stack functions, I take that kind of physicality, and I've decided to value doing ecstatic dance and contact improv, where
Mm-hmm.
I get to be in physical contact with human beings, really vigorous at times. When you find the right partner, it can be a very vigorous physical and energetic connection, but
Mm-hmm.
it's non-violent. And so that stacks the function of my adrenals needing to be expressed, my physical body needing that, my mental body, with the function that my physical body really craves play and exercise. So I've got all of these values on top. So that activity is more highly valued. It doesn't tend to fall into the waste of time unless I show up and I'm not getting those needs met.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is a waste of time. I've done that. Sitting there, everyone else is dancing. Oh, this is a waste of time. No, I came here because I value connection. I value physicality. I value playfulness. Can I get any of those values, even if I can't get all of them?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I can recalibrate into it being not a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
I also value getting out of the house, so that's easy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a thought. I'd love to hear from people if you start stacking functions and values, like I value this and I value this and I value this. What happens to your sense of that way that time is spent?
Yeah.
Anything else, Russ?
One of my core values is centered around my need for touch, and so
Me too.
it has led me to introduce willing people to hugs as frequent as possible. And the director of fitness center on the cruise ship that I was on, that doggone boat was 18 stories high, 1,000 feet long. Oh my heavens. And so there was everything a city would have, including this fitness center. And this gal craved touch. And so we hugged and hugged and hugged. And it was a good thing. The energy transfer was huge on both parts.
That's a waste of time.
Right.
That's a waste of time. Hugs are a waste of time.
Well, this is such a pregnant subject. I think we could go on for a long time, but thank you for helping to make this enjoyable for a lot of people. And I hope that the thought that there is no such thing as a waste of time, there is indeed instead a meeting of certain needs that fit our value system. So I love that way of looking at it, Rick.
And values can conflict internally.
True.
I can value my solitude, and I can value connection. And that's I think another subject is this balancing of our emotional ecosystem, and that's that, to me, that's one of the things that does come up. Thank you for bringing it up right away about the balance, finding a place where our needs are being balanced, our expression is being balanced, and some of that for many people falls into the wasting time, and it creates this dynamic of shame around it that is really hard on our body. We can't really savor what we value if we've got this blanket of shame heavy on us. So if that comes up for someone, if this is a specific, please bring it to a circle call. We'd love to tap with you on it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the feedback.
Big hugs.
Yay. Hugs. Let's waste some time. Hug.
Yay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.